Hey everyone, this is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics, and today I am here with Jordan Valerie Allen, who is the National Communications Director for Run with Pride. Hello, Jordan.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Thanks so much for joining me. So, could you tell us a little bit about what Run with Pride is and when it started?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Run with Pride is a very recent organization. We started because we thought that candidates for Congress who are LGBTQ really need some institutional support. There are so many barriers to just being a person who is LGBTQ in America, just having rights, living comfortably, and having access to the same things that our cisgender heterosexual fellow Americans have access to. And it's so much harder to run for Congress, especially when the Republican Party is so institutionally against our very existence. So our goal is to elect LGBTQ Democrats to Congress.
Okay, and so specifically Democrats.
Yep.
What is the current representation in Congress of LGBTQ people?
It's pretty terrible. Currently, there are only 7 members of Congress who identify as LGBTQ.
That's pretty low.
Yep.
Of those, there are no currently serving members who are openly trans. Is that true?
Yep. None.
And so you started this organization, you said last November. What kind of organization is it? What's the organizational structure?
I think what makes Run with Pride really unique is our focus on the groundwork. So we are the only LGBTQ PAC that's really driven by boots on the ground work where we're sending staffers out to help individual candidates and support them, not just throwing money here and there at consulting firms. And we've seen that really turnout is so essential, as we saw in the Texas and Illinois primaries, where there's very different turnout in those places. But really getting people excited on the ground about candidates, running grassroots campaigns is how you win and how we hope to win in 2018.
So, can you tell us about some of the candidates that you're currently supporting?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are supporting some incumbents like Senator Tammy Baldwin, who's running for re-election to her United States Senate seat in Wisconsin. We're also supporting some people who are seeking higher office, who are already in office, like Kyrsten Sinema, who's running to fill Jeff Flake's United States Senate seat in Arizona.
That would be a good get.
Yes. We're really hoping there. She's our only non-incumbent United States Senate candidate. Unfortunately, there aren't as many out LGBTQ candidates for Senate as the House, which is just kind of the nature of how the chambers work. We're supporting candidates all over the country. One who I've spoken to before on the Millennial Politics podcast is Gina Ortiz-Jones, who is a former Air Force intelligence officer, a veteran, and if elected, she would be the first openly LGBTQ member of Texas's congressional delegation.
Which is kind of amazing because that's an enormous delegation.
Yeah.
And so you said that you do sort of boots on the ground work. What does that look like in these different places?
Yeah, so I think it's different in different areas, of course. Something that I spoke about with our founder when I first got involved in the organization was how understaffed rural candidates are in particular. A lot of the time you're focusing on these districts that are very blue and very progressive. And of course, those matter. But we also have to have people really working on the ground and talking to people, knocking on doors, sending out flyers and all that in rural districts, because it's not impossible to flip these seats. It's not impossible to get LGBTQ Democrats elected. But there is this narrative that you can only focus on, these white cisgender heterosexual people who are going to reach that same demographic. It's not as if LGBTQ people don't exist in rural America, as if there aren't working class LGBTQ Americans, as if that's not the case for most LGBTQ Americans. So it's so important for us to focus on these districts that some PACs just aren't interested in, and show LGBTQ candidates that they do have an institution that will support them, even if the Democratic Party as an institution might not be so interested in doing so.
It seems like a side benefit of that. Of course, the ultimate goal is to get them elected, but another benefit of that is, of course, other people in that congressional district who are themselves LGBTQ, who maybe are not out yet, or who are kids in that district, are going to see this person, running for Congress and see that that's something that's possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something that really stands out is that we only endorse actual LGBTQ candidates. There are some PACs who focus on LGBTQ rights who endorse allies as well. Some of them have actually endorsed more allies than actual LGBTQ candidates. And well, of course, I want as many allies as possible in Congress. There is just nothing like seeing yourself represented. And there's nothing like having someone who has shared your experiences, being able to advocate for you, knowing what your oppression is like, knowing the hardships you've faced, and being able to really speak for that in Congress, not only with their voice, but with their votes.
Yeah, we had an episode a while back about gender identity and the politics of gender identity. And one of the things that seems really striking is that there's so little representation at any level of government of people who are trans, and especially we couldn't think of any examples of people in government at any level who are non-binary.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really tough for trans and non-binary folks in particular. We supported Brianna Westbrook, who was running for Congress in Arizona. Unfortunately, she lost her primary, but it was a really, really strong fight. There aren't a lot of out candidates running. We recently saw in Virginia the first out state legislator was elected to the House of Delegates, Danica Rome, and that was really big. But it's kind of sad that that was so big to me. It's sad that it's our first state legislator. It's not our first congresswoman in United States history. It's the first out state legislator. And that's not to diminish her hard work or what an achievement that is, but it just speaks to how far behind we are.
Yeah. Well, and now Brianna's running in the state house race in Arizona, so that will be exciting to watch as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So you talked about some of the issues that face LGBTQ people just living in America, especially living in America in this administration. Can you talk about what some of those are and what sorts of supports Congress could be giving?
Yeah, I mean, just think of any problem anyone has, and it's just amplified so much for the LGBTQ community. And even more so for people who have intersections, other marginalized identities, disabled LGBTQ people of color, homelessness, drug use, mental illness disproportionately plague our community. And it's not just the small things, it even manifests in violence because, you're setting up this infrastructure of hate where there are politicians in Congress who don't believe we're real, who literally advocate for us to be electrocuted to supposedly be cured of our identities. That really trickles down in every sense. There is currently a huge epidemic of violence against transgender people, especially against Black transgender women. On average, in 2017, there were a reported 2 murders of Black trans women. And that's just what was reported. Given an estimate by Slate, it's likely far greater than that. So we don't even have that much data, and it's becoming even harder to get data. As you may have seen, the Trump administration officially declared and confirmed that LGBTQ people will not be counted on the 2020 census. So there's this real fight to erase our existence and ensure that we can't get the infrastructure we need to have support. And the reason why this matters so much on the census is because the census is used to distribute resources. And knowing the sheer number of LGBTQ people, because there are so many of us, but we don't have that data, could mean that we have the resources we need allocated to our communities, to these issues I'm speaking of, homelessness, drug use, AIDS. This is so important that we have all of that counted. And there just aren't people in Congress who are really advocating for us. Even the allies, I haven't really seen a lot of them speaking up about this because it doesn't have the same personal weight. And another big thing we're advocating for is the Equality Act, which would give comprehensive federal protections to LGBTQ folks. These are just basic things, banning conversion therapy, which is a discredited far-right Christian practice in which you can use things like torture to supposedly cure LGBTQ people. Like, it's pretty logical that that should be illegal on a federal level, but it isn't. And unfortunately, even for a lot of Democrats, that's not a top priority. And that's why we need people who understand the pain of those experiences, the pain of having those even be an option to advocate for us.
Yeah, I think there's also a very steep learning curve, especially with trans issues. That's something that we discovered when we were podcasting about it was, we thought of ourselves as allies, as people who knew a lot and who had been through various types of training. And there were still issues that I had just never even considered about healthcare access and things that, unless you're really trying to inform yourself and educate yourself, are just things that are not even going to rise to the top of your mind. And so, it seems like without representation in Congress or people who are trying really, really hard to make this their issue, that they're going to inform themselves, that there's going to be a lot that gets missed.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've experienced that in my life, as I came out, as I, went through the personal processes I went through, I just realized how many barriers were in place. I'm still realizing it to this day. I mean, a big thing that hit me recently was that I can't live in most states because I am legally not protected. It's totally legal to fire me because of my identity. And, I think there are just a lot of people who don't think about that. I mean, for a lot of my life, I didn't think about that. But it's as basic as that. You have very limited options for where you can live, even with legal protections. Not every organization is going to make you welcome. Most of them won't truly welcome you, no matter how much lip service they may or may not give. And so you're restricted in every sense for where you can go to eat, where you can use the bathroom. Like, the very existence of LGBTQ people in America is restricted.
Yeah, and the pieces of identity that are needed for things like voting in many places can be very difficult to obtain depending on where you live and what your quote unquote legal status is in various places.
Yeah, for sure. That's a big problem for a lot of transgender Americans, getting your gender changed on your birth certificate and other documentation is incredibly difficult to varying levels on different states. Some states it's simply impossible. Some states where it is possible, they're trying to criminalize it, ban it. We saw that kind of stuff in North Carolina, but that is not the only state where this is happening. And that makes it hard to vote because, what it says on your ID as your gender may not be how you're presenting, or maybe you're forced to present in a way that violates who you are just to cast a ballot and participate in the democratic process.
So, how can our listeners help if they're interested in helping if they themselves are LGBTQ or if they're not?
Yeah, well, for our organization, you can go to runwithpride.org to learn more about us, sign up for our mailing list. Donations are so important. These don't just go to consulting firms. These really go to the candidates and working on the ground to get them elected, going with proven strategies that work and are going to change the composition of Congress in 2018. Additionally, you can look into all of the candidates and see if one of them is near you, then you could potentially volunteer for them, intern with them, potentially get a job even. If there's no one in your district, in your state, there's still a lot of remote work you can do. So it's not just the organization, it's about these candidates and individuals that represent our values. And you can put your whole self into our organization and into these candidates. And of course, you can also volunteer for us, volunteer with us. And we appreciate any support we can get. It is a team of really dedicated individuals who care about this work. And, if you're volunteering, it's clear you care, and we appreciate that so much.
And are you taking recommendations for candidates if there are people that